I'm Shailee Nanavati, and I will be your host today. Welcome to the first webinar in our series, Unlocking the Secrets to an Innovative Mind. Shape Your Future brings you industry leaders so you can hear from the top professionals and their innovative careers and paths. You can find our website with the link in the comments to find more information about Shape Your Future and for details and notifications for our other events. To hear about our latest updates and information, be sure to join our subscription list. It is now my pleasure to introduce everyone to Shreyansh Daftry. An innovative robotics technologist, Shreyansh works in the Computer Vision Group and the Autonomous Systems Division at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He studied at Carnegie Mellon, specializing in computer vision, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, and graduated with a master's degree in robotics. He has been a special awards judge for the Society for Science and the Public, and has served as the first-tier mission support staff for the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation at NASA. Shreyansh, I can't wait to get to know you more and know more about your career. So tell us more about you.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for the introduction and inviting me to the webinar here. I'm very happy to be here and talking about my career experience and sharing with some of you. So I was born and brought up in India, having and spent most of my childhood and schooling there. I think I was exposed very early to computer programming, and I was hooked up pretty soon, and in general because I was very interested in problem solving. So as I started to basically proceed through high school, I just tried to get better at programming and eventually found my interest in computer science and artificial intelligence. That's even before AI was a hype, I had started to gain an interest in both AI and robotics, just because it was very interesting for me to think of how humans think and basically impart that knowledge and ability to machines so that they can do. And partly it was also inspired by all the sci-fi movies where you see really intelligent machines doing really fun stuff. So that was me growing up, learning through college. I basically spent time understanding the technical know-how of robotics, getting my experience both through knowledge as well as through practical hands-on experience. And in order to do that better, I actively looked for internships and to get more real-world experiences. So through my undergraduate, while I was doing my undergraduate in India, I was also actively looking for internships that would expose me to how people around the world are doing this robotics. I was fortunate to get good internship and work with really good professors at different places in the world, and which eventually solidified my interest in pursuing robotics and AI as a career. So in order to then basically take the next step and get more deeper into this, I ended up spending a couple of years in Europe, where I basically was working at a research lab in Austria as a visiting researcher. So this was my year after my undergraduate, basically taking a year gap, trying to both get better in terms of research and preparing myself for graduate school, but at the same time also taking the year off just to get better life experiences and traveling. Working in a multicultural environment, I think those are very valuable skills that I was able to pick up. Once I did that, I then I basically moved to the United States, where I to pursue my master's degree in robotics at Carnegie Mellon. That was a really amazing experience that definitely taught me a lot about both in robotics and in general, the field, and also career as in general. After CMU, where I focused a lot on basically becoming an expert at computer vision, I realized one of the best places to apply that was NASA. And this was something that helped me connect the loop again, because growing up, I was always extremely fascinated by space and space exploration. So this was my one opportunity to basically combine my two love. It was basically space exploration and then my basically matching that with my technical skill set of robotics and AI. And where I work currently, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is probably one of the only places in the world you can do both of them. So yes, I feel pretty fortunate in that way to be able to find myself at NASA. And here my role has been for the last 4 or 5 years, for the last 4 years since I've been at JPL, my role has been to basically work as a researcher in the field of robotics and AI to propel the next frontier in space exploration.
Wow, that's so amazing. Your whole career journey, having this passion when you were so young about space and robotics, going through the whole path, and finally being at NASA and being able to do both space and robotics. That's amazing. It's amazing your journey so far. So at
Thank you.
NASA, yeah. So at NASA, you do work in both robotics and space. I know a couple of the projects that are really amazing that you worked on, like the Mars sample return and the planetary drones. Do you mind sharing more about that and your roles in these projects?
Definitely, yeah. Those are so over my time at NASA for the last 4 years, I've worked on a portfolio of projects ranging from both applications here on Earth as well as Moon, Mars, and beyond. But as you mentioned, I think Mars sample return is one that is probably the most closest to my heart, and it was almost one of the first projects that I started working on, and is still one of the active projects that I have. So just to give context of Mars sample return, so one of the top priority science goals for NASA in the coming decade is to bring pieces of Mars back to Earth. And the reason we want to do that is so that every time we send a rover to Mars, we can only send a few instruments with it. So there's a limited amount of science we can do with that. But if we can actually bring pieces of samples of Mars back to here to Earth, then we would basically have all the labs around the world and all the scientists here that can use that pieces of data and then do science with it. So it would completely change how we understand our understanding of Mars and would enable us to understand the solar system in general. Now, so that's what Mars sample return is about. Now, why this is challenging is because for the last 60, 70 years, while we've been doing space exploration, it has been challenging itself to launch from Earth. Till today, we have never had something launch back from another planet. So if you want to actually bring samples back from Mars, we don't have to just get there, we have to bring it back to Earth. So this is almost like the movie Martian, just that we will be doing it in real. So we will be we'll be sending a rocket, we'll be sending a rover there, which actually just got launched 10 days back, the Mars Perseverance rover. It'll go there, it'll collect pieces of sample on Earth. Uh, it will collect pieces of it will collect samples of Mars and it will leave it on the surface. 6 years from now, we will have another rover that will go and collect those samples. And then we'll have a third mission that will actually bring it back to Earth. So, and my role within that so far in the last 4 years has been to looking at the whole architecture of a mission that spans 15 years across different missions. So basically, and within that, I serve as the autonomy expert. So basically, how do you use AI to make all of these pieces come together and actually make this happen? So that's something having worked on it firsthand. I think and something that is so big. It's definitely been a very fun part of my work.
That's incredible. Like, honestly, it's kind of hard to comprehend. Like, we're sending something to Mars. It just launched a few days ago, in case you don't know, but like the audience. But
Yeah.
and then it's gonna bring samples back, and then we're gonna be able to use those samples to really like change space exploration and science. Like the pieces that it's the Perseverance rover that just launched. And I think that's amazing that you get to even like work with all of these rovers, send them to Mars and everything. So I want to ask you, it's not like any company can just go start sending rovers to Mars. What does NASA do differently? Like what makes NASA so unique that it's able to take all of these scientists, engineers, everyone, make it into one big project and manage to pull something like this off?
Great question. And that's personally something even I have been asking myself in general, because I don't come from an aerospace background. So learning a lot about how NASA works has been really something I have been trying to at least pick up. And I think the answers lies in some of the things you already mentioned. So I think the first thing is just the team of engineers and scientists that really are. So I feel very fortunate to work with the team of people I do, and the kind of people I've met at NASA has been almost overwhelming. Some people have spent 60, 70 years of their life just working at NASA, sometimes on the same project, which is to me, at least to my generation right now, it's unimaginable to spend even after a year, I get bored of something. So like spending 50 years on a project is just unimaginable, but it's that passion. So it's the team. So bringing together a really good team of people who can do that is one key thing. Second thing, which is probably in NASA's favor in general, that helps, you mentioned about companies cannot just send rovers to Mars. And this is where I think being a government organization really helps, because if you're doing something for science, so NASA's goal is really to go to Mars, understand if life was ever there on Mars, if life could ever be on Mars in the future, or if we could establish colonies. These kinds of questions they are probably the biggest questions for humanity, but they don't have a business value immediately, at least. So if you are a if you're a startup or a big organization, even a tech company, you don't have the incentive to build this kinds of thing. And this is where government can invest billions of dollars to actually enable these kinds of things, which would eventually lead to commercial interest, which is now what we're seeing with SpaceX and Blue Origin. So that's probably the second reason that allows NASA to actually accomplish these things.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I think you made really good points. Like it's the government that's able to kind of like help reach that goal, and just the different scientists and engineers and like the passion and commitment so many people have at NASA. That's really what makes it special. I wanted to ask, like, the recent rocket launch from SpaceX, what are your views on that? I mean, it's amazing. We're finally sending like people from the United States into space. Like, just tell me your thoughts on it.
Oh, it was beautiful. So, I mean, I wish I was able to see the launch in person. Unfortunately, because of the crazy times we are in, we weren't able to go to Florida to see the launch, but it was a beautiful launch. And this combined with, I think, the recent activities of the SpaceX launches that we had, where SpaceX was able to launch astronauts from American soil to the International Space Station, and how beautiful it was in terms of, and especially it was almost futuristic to say. So amazing, I think, and we are, at least if you're interested in space and space exploration, this is a really good time to be into this field, because after several decades of space exploration where NASA has been taking single steps, we are now at a point where we have brought a lot of commercial companies. So it's at the knee of an exponential curve. So it's about to really take off, where you're going to see more and more launch, which is basically going to happen very quickly. You will have commercial interest very soon. You'll hopefully have commercial tourism. You might have civilians that might be going to space. So the whole economy is opening up. So this is a really interesting time. But I think no matter how many launches you see, I think just looking at a rocket launch, having something you've built actually go to space, or even just looking at a rocket that's going to space, it just talks about what kind of great achievements humans can do if they just put their brain into the right places. So it's really a huge feat, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, yeah. So like it's I definitely think it's an upcoming field, like the commercial, everyone's like trying to go to space, get there to Mars and everything. It's a good field to kind of like it's your chance to be in space exploration. That kind of led me to my next question. A lot of students right now are struggling getting internships and jobs, and I know a lot of people like have been fond of NASA for a very long time. What was the application process to getting into NASA like, and what are some advice you have for students trying to get internships or jobs at NASA?
So great question again, and it's definitely like, especially with it is. I understand it's a challenge right now, at least with COVID and with all the times we are living in. At the same time, one of NASA being a government agency, and since it's a science-focused agency, one of the biggest goals we have is education. So it's one of the pillars, and the reason we do all these space exploration is to allow future education purposes. So in the context of that, student internships and student development programs are actually one of the biggest things that we push for. So if somebody is interested in NASA, we have a lot of resources. Like, you just need to type NASA internships, and you'll basically be the first 20 links. You will take you to the right places. Said that, there would probably be at least 10,000 more of people who will be applying for it. So it's not obviously like you receive so many applications at the same time. So what helps is figuring out how to differentiate yourself. And it's not rocket science, uh, no pun intended, but it's basically, uh, if you're working in a field, the best way to prepare yourself for an internship or be selected or standing out is by first knowing what you want to do. So in a field, like, try to understand, if you're pursuing even a course that got excited, try to understand and get knowledge into what are the current things that people are trying to do in that field. What's interesting? What are the big challenges in that field? And the second thing is, try that out, or try out an interesting project, or have an idea regarding what you would want to do in that. And the third would be network with people. So for example, if you Google go on a lot of online platforms like Google, LinkedIn, or anything you can find, and figure out who are the people working in that, reach out to them. It's Most of the people are very happy to talk about the work they do. So, and if somebody reaches out to me randomly saying that, hey, I'm looking for a NASA internship, there might be 5,000 of others who would do that. But if you tell me that, hey, I've been working on this area, I know you have probably also done some work in this, I'm really interested in doing an internship under you. Maybe there's something I can. So that you need to find a fit between what the people who are doing that and what you are bringing to the table, and in that way. So I think that helps. I briefly touched on it, but networking is probably one of the best tools you have. Apart, so focus on your technical skills to make sure that you're at least qualified enough if somebody is interested in you. But in order to have people notice, you will have to network, and you'll have to reach out to people and show that initiative.
Yeah, so kind of for students looking, just to recap all of that, that was really good information. Thank you for those pointers. You have to find a way to stand out. Like everyone's trying to apply during these times, and standing out, like aligning your interests with whatever the internship is doing. Like if it's something in specific space exploration, work on a project on that, and then network and try to make those connections so you can really show your initiative and show what you have to offer to other people. So I wanted to quickly touch on some of your experiences at Carnegie Mellon. I know it's a great school. So maybe could you share your experience going to Carnegie Mellon, and how you think it is in terms of studying robotics?
In a single line, it's the best place in the world to study robotics. I mean, hands down. It's where robotics and AI literally started, I would say, almost. It's one of the only schools that did robotics 40 years ago, and it's still doing it. So it's definitely one of the best places to study robotics and AI in general. Said that, it is a very challenging school, and yet and still rewarding. So that is how probably the two words I would use for describing my experience. When I signed up for it, I did not know what I was getting into, and it definitely pushed me to the limits of what you need to, of what's achieved, of basically as limits of what you think you can do. You will have sleepless nights, and you will be given tough challenges, working with some of the best people in the world. So it's definitely challenging, and it keeps you on your toes. But at the end, when it's all done, you end up being a much better person, both in career-wise as well as in terms of your personal experiences. So it's definitely rewarding, and it makes you understand the field and get to the top of the field in that way. So highly recommend. And the reason why it's that, and it's not just the program or the school, it's mostly the people. Carnegie Mellon has a very unique way of bringing a very diverse set of people with very unique experiences together. So even if you're doing robotics, let's say you're coming from a very robotic, from a particular field of robotics, you might meet people from sociology or dance or music, and you would be having very rich interaction. And so it's this very good diverse experiences that allows you to look at the field in a very unique way that almost no other school can provide.
That's great. So I didn't even know that. So if you want to go into robotics, Carnegie Mellon is a great school to go to. That's amazing how they've been kind of doing robotics 40 years since, and how the people, like you said, the people make a difference at the college you choose to go to. And it's good to know that they kind of have that diversity and that you can get that rich experience from that school. So at Carnegie Mellon, you did do research position, even at the Graz University of Technology, you're able to do research positions. How did you manage to get these positions, even when so many other students are applying and looking to work under different mentors?
Great question again. And this is definitely a challenge, especially early on. It's almost like a check 22 problem. You need an internship in your CV to get a better internship. So bootstrapping that is the hardest part. Like when you're especially in high school or when you just get into college, basically getting the first internship, doing really well into that, and then that basically opens doors to more internships like that. So that's what usually, it's the snowball effect that happens. And at the end, when you look back, everything seems very easy, but there were times where I would write 1,000 emails and get one reply from a potential mentor. So it's definitely be persistent, try a lot, like don't give up, and that's one key ability in order to succeed on a long term. But as I mentioned, a lot of thing about NASA internship, it's the same thing. Just make yourself differentiable from the others. So if you're really talented, if you've done something that I work on, and if you come to me saying that, hey, you want to do this, then I would definitely look at. I would be interested in working with you all. We are always. It's almost. I'll pose the question from the other side. Being a mentor, it's hard to sometimes find good students with good experiences. So I almost am shorthanded sometimes. So if you bring something that I am looking for, I would immediately hire you, because so it's almost that way. So it's a two-way story. In terms of the research experience I got at GRAS, this was again built up from one of my previous internships that I did. One of my, I also went to Carnegie Mellon to do an internship during my undergrad. And at that time, I met a lot of people. So networking, talk to other people about what you're doing and what you're interested in. And through that, I got connected to the professor who was also a visiting researcher at that time. And he ended up inviting me to work with him for a year. So it's basically a lot of connections that you have to build through mutual interest in work.
I see. So that's kind of good to know, because like it can be hard sometimes when you're trying to find it. You have to still persevere through it and everything, but it can be hard when you're still trying to get that first, second internship to get that following effect, so you can get opportunities and positions like you mentioned. But I think it's important to persevere, like you said, and don't give up, because you will be able to get somewhere. So I think we can open it up to the audience now for any questions you have. So put them in the Q&A, and then we will be able to answer those questions for you right now. Okay, so since I just announced it, while we wait for some questions to roll in,
Sure.
I know a lot of students right here, right now watching, are really curious about this, because in your description, it mentioned that you were a judge for ISEF. A lot of students, that this like our dream to present our project at ISEF and like be able to be judged with students from all around the world. So what do you look for in a project when you judge at ISEF? What do you think makes a good project?
Okay, great. Yes, so that's an experience I recently I was able to have. I think, and I was lucky. I think being on the NASA panel for ISAF for the global finals, I was really lucky to have witnessed like such amazing, and it was almost a humbling experience to look at high school students like solving such big problems. So to answer your question, I think while we typically always have to follow judging criteria that are provided to us to make sure that everybody is judged in a fair way, and those are usually the standard ones like innovation, how technically sound you are. I think something that hits me very strongly is how out of the box you can think, or like how out of the box your ideas are. And that's also something very core to NASA. You had asked a question, what does NASA do differently? I think one thing is very clear is the kind of projects that NASA does or thinks about is unparalleled. There's almost nobody else who thinks of it that way. So when I talk about out of the box ideas, think of everyday problems that people are suffering with or on Earth, or anything which is basically a good challenge, and provide rather than and come up with a new perspective on how to look at this. So equivalent example would be for 20, 30 years, the way we would commute is by having public taxis on the road. And then somebody comes up and thinks, why can't we just crowdsource it, and comes up with Uber? So that's an out of the box idea to think of that completely disrupts the industry. And that's something what we look for is you may not have the best technical solution, but can you have a raw potential that is capable of making into a huge idea?
I like that. It's so it's more like you said, like innovation, thinking out of the box, but also seeing if you can really like disrupt the industry and kind of like make change, like being different and having that
Yeah.
potential. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I've seen among winning solutions and winning startups, or anything in general. Like, do you have that vision to look at things in a different way? Um, so that's really important for me personally.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have a few questions. So first one is, how do you find a mentor? Is there a place or a website where you can learn about different mentors and reach out to people?
Okay, great question again, and that's something I would say one of the biggest challenges I had to face having grown up. I pretty much had no guidance in terms of how should I be taking the path. And not having good mentors is a big bottleneck, and definitely is stops you. So there are multiple layers to the answer. One, but the easiest is look around you. Oftentimes you don't. Even if they are not people in your field, oftentimes just talking to people who are doing good things in their field helps you get some information regarding how you should approach your problems or approach your career. Um, and there's always like people around you you can find. So if you're in school, talk to your teachers, talk to people who have done more, who have got more life experience than you have. Beyond that, find people. So, for example, if you're interested in NASA, look up. I mean, everything is online now. So basically, look up people and reach out to them. Use LinkedIn, resources, anything you can find. Basically, try to reach out to people. Most of the time, people are happy to mentor you back. If you are genuine, if you do your homework, like if you just write to me and say, "I'm interested. Can you guide me?" That's a very vague statement and I cannot answer back. But if you write to me and showing that you have a specific interest in something, you've done your homework, then I'll be happy to invest my own time into you for your own development. And the third would be, I guess now there are a lot of online platforms that provide you the ability to connect to mentors. So this is one example of that, where you can attend webinars like this to basically learn more. But then there are also other um, I think online platform which you can get connected one-on-one to. So there's multiple layers, but definitely for the first thing, start around you. Reach out to people who are just next to you.
Yeah, that's great. I think people often try to look like far ahead, like I want to work with a mentor from like Stanford or MIT or Carnegie Mellon. But what's really important is just that you have to kind of use your own connections because that can, in the end, kind of take you farther than like reaching out to so many different people would be.
Right.
So our next question is, do you think that humans will be able to visit Mars in the next 10 or 20 years?
Wow, that's I think that's one of the most common questions, of course, I get, and I wish I had a clear answer for that. 10 years looks difficult. 20 years maybe, and that's given how exponential growth we are looking at space exploration. And I'll give you a reason for that. And that's something I have been trying to. Obviously, when I joined, I was like, why has NASA not sent people to the Mars yet? And obviously complain like a lot of people do. Now, the challenge with that is Moon is close. Mars is very far away. We know how to get to Mars. So if you ask me the question, can we send people to Mars? Yes, we can. Can we bring them back? That's the hard question. So, and the reason is it is a 3-year round trip to go to Mars and come back. Would you even right now be able to do a 3-year round trip here on Earth, where you just leave everything and just basically, if I tell you go on a 3-year round trip on your, like pick up something like your pick up a RV and just go there in 3 years, it's a long term. And especially when you're doing this in space, there are a lot beyond the technology to actually send people to Mars and bring them back. There are a lot of human factors we don't understand. And that's what NASA is working on. While SpaceX is building better launch vehicles, we are trying to understand the human factors. Um, can a human even survive in space for 3 years? The maximum we've spent time in space is just beyond a year, and that was just recently when an astronaut spent more than a year in space. And we are only, once he's back, now we're doing science on it and only realizing that staying in space for that long has huge implications on the human body. So another great question that I actually learned by taking part in that analog program that Shailee was talking about is, what if I put you along with 5 of your best friends into one room for 3 years? Would you basically beat yourself to death and kill all the people around you? How do you survive in that kind of environment? what are the right kind of skill set? Do you need a cook? Do you need a geologist? Do you need an engineer? Do you need a doctor? What's the right skill set of people who needs to be sent for a 3-year mission? There are a lot of open questions like that that we haven't understood yet. So unless we can answer all of that, we can't send humans to the moon safely, to Mars safely. But we are working towards it.
It's just such a valid point. I think we not working at NASA, not being involved in all of this, it's like we sometimes forget all of these factors and different questions we first have to answer. It's not as easy just like we send a rover, why can't we send a human?
Exactly.
It's different. Okay, so I think we have time for one last question. This is actually a good question to end off on. So what is your advice for students looking to go into robotics or aspiring to work at NASA?
I would say, okay, let me think about that. So one of the things I feel personally, and I'll answer this question in general, but I think this is also applicable for robotics and AI and working at NASA in general, is pick a topic that you're very interested in. So, I mean, early in your career, it's okay to explore. Basically, while you're in high school, like read about a lot of things, be curious about a lot of things. Once you then find something you're really passionate, interested in pursuing, go all in and go deep into it. There is nothing that helps differentiate yourself more than having a deep expertise into something. So if you're focused on a particular problem, then that is going to be the best way. And that's the simplest way to get hired anywhere. Become a world expert at that. And it's actually not as difficult as it sounds on paper. Like if you really spend a lot of years on it, practicing it, being focused, in a very depth-oriented way, then you eventually start rising in your career and becoming the top in your field. And once you're that, everybody would want to hire you. They would come for you. It's as simple as that.
That's great advice. As becoming like kind of an expert in one area, like discovering your passions. That is perfect. So we're sorry that we're running a few minutes late, but I just wanted to thank you so much for your time today, Shreyansh. Your career is so interesting, and it was such a pleasure to learn more about you and all of your experiences.
Thank you so much, Shailee, for inviting me again. I think this was a great experience. I had a great time interacting with all of you. You had some great questions. I think there were some great questions from the audience. And I also want to say that what you're doing here with this platform, I think this is a great work. I think connecting people who have been through this journey and then the people who are looking for this, I think this is a major gap. And I think I've emphasized this enough. But this is what you're really trying to target, I think, is having these kinds of interactions and learning from other people's experience. I think there is no substitute for that. So the fact that you're doing this is a great job. Like, yeah, kudos to you.
Thank you so much. I just really hope this helps all of our audience here today and students to come really find their passion and understand what they want to do with their career and where they want to take it. And viewers, thank you so much for joining in and watching. I just wanted to mention before we go that don't forget to register for next week's speaker, Farina Contractor. Farina is the director of International Emerging Tech Innovation at Walmart and the founder of the Walmart Innovation Community. And she's really excited to share more about her career journey and how we can all be innovators. So make sure you register for that with the link in the chat. And once again, thank you everyone and Shreyansh for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining in.